Here is a woman who is angry at Black Americans who went on tour in Palestine. First video will show woman talking about Black Americans who went on tour in Palestine. After that video, you will hear strong reactions from Black Americans and my thoughts on this woman's statements in video.
I don't know what I was expecting from my trip to Palestine, but I certainly did not expect to walk away with racial tensions between myself and the Black people in our group. And that's really disappointing for me to admit, because I was so excited to go on this trip with Black Americans, because I was always under the impression that Black people will be our greatest allies because they understand more than anybody what it's like to live under occupation, what it's like to be oppressed and racially profiled. But during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not going to sit here and deny that anti-blackness exists in every single part of the world. But the issue of race is much different in Palestine than in most other places in the world. In Palestine, Palestinians of all colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian Black person is more privileged than a Palestinian of any color. And an American, Black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group were too busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to sit with the reality that in modern day, there are some people that are more oppressed than them. One person in particular was incredibly problematic, especially considering she was one of the group leads who was hosting private conversations exclusively for the 7 Black people in the group, which under almost any other circumstances I would encourage. I encourage Black people to create safe spaces for themselves to discuss racial issues among themselves. But the issue is that the only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about how slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated take, by the way. It was not exclusive to Black people, and it was not done mostly by Palestinians. So I believe these conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians were so dangerous to Palestinians and ultimately to Black Palestinian solidarity. The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. We sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. They are Black. They are visibly Black, and yet they are highly respected in the Palestinian community for the work that they do for Palestinians. We even talked to the chef at our hotel in the last couple of days, who was a political prisoner. He had just gotten out of prison 2 months before we arrived in Palestine. And he told us that he sat side by side with an Afro-Palestinian, son of the couple who runs the Afro-Pali Center. He sat with him in prison, and he was shocked when I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are. During this trip, I sat with Palestinians and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me about racism in Palestine. And every single one of them was like, what is there to say? Like, racism exists in every community, yes. But in Palestine, it's actually few and far between, because the issue of race is so much more complicated in a place like Palestine. And I have been involved in Black activism for many years. And I know that when I am in Black spaces, it is not my place to call out issues within the Black community, especially when those people are being slaughtered. When I am in Black spaces, I am there to observe, to learn, to be an ally, not to call out Black people. By the way, these same people who sat there and talked all this shit about how racist Palestinians are did not hesitate to pose in front of a ginormous George Floyd mural painted by a Palestinian artist. They posed with that artist in front of the mural. And I bet they wouldn't dare look that artist in the face and say that he's racist. But I refused to pose in that picture with the rest of the group because literally an hour before that, they were making fun of Palestinians. We passed a mural that was supposed to be, I believe, of Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't the greatest art. And so it kind of looked like George Floyd, and they couldn't tell who it was. And they literally said, I'm so sick of these people. And yet they won't hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money. And she made a comment about how, oh, notice how they're not asking the Black people for money because they think all Black people are poor. And I said, you don't know that. Those same people didn't ask me, a Palestinian American, for money. They're not assuming I'm poor. In fact, when they know you're American, you're immediately up here to them. They immediately assume you have money and that you're privileged in ways that they'll never experience. The reason that they didn't ask some people for money had nothing to do with the fact that those people are Black. They simply just approached a few people out of the entire group asking for money. I could ramble about this for hours because it was one of the most frustrating things of my life to watch people come from America to a place like Palestine and act like they're more oppressed than people literally living under occupation. And it's so ironic because the entire time I'm trying to find parallels between the lives of Palestinians, between the racial profiling that I experienced as a Palestinian and the experiences of Black people in America. I thought that this would be an opportunity for us to come together and understand each other better, not to create more division. But this is why some people are so dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black community as a whole. But ultimately, I think if you have internal biases against Palestinians, you should not be going to Palestine. And if you don't want to acknowledge the experiences of Palestinians in their entirety, then to be honest, we don't need you as an ally. Seeing what Palestinians are going through only makes you think, yeah, no, we have it worse. When you're an American, you are not a true ally. And I will be talking more about the issue of people taking trips to Palestine with a limited understanding of Palestinians and Palestinian history. Because there were so many other issues with some of the people who went on this trip for all the wrong reasons. This is why some people are so dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black.
I don't speak for us all, but I do speak for the rotten tomatoes when I say you can go. Consider yourself pushed, shoved. You are lucky that you were able to cobble together a group of Black people to go on that trip in the first place. After you nonsense, never Kamala, vote for Kamala as a vote for genocide people shows your asses last November. Okay? Also, I don't believe you. I don't believe the beggars asking for money incident is the only instance of racism that they experience. I believe it's the most innocuous one that you strategically picked to minimize their concerns. Okay?
This video unfortunately landed on my FYP, and I had to put my phone down several times while watching it because of how inhumane everything that she was saying was. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to come back tomorrow when I'm more calm. But in the meantime, I want y'all to ask yourselves what you want Black people to do when we're faced with racism. Since you're the expert on anti-Blackness, Tell us exactly what you want us to do in face of racism. And I understand the nuances of going to a place that's occupied and experiencing racism. That is an extremely complicated place to be in. But the idea that Black people in a situation who are more privileged in that moment than people who are under occupation should just let the racism roll off their backs like water is a wild, inhumane thing to say. Considering that the Black people on your trip were having conversations amongst themselves, how were you involving yourself in those conversations about how they were dealing with the racism that they were facing that was not being directed towards you? Furthermore, another aspect of racism that people don't understand is the physical component. So when I was in Morocco, when I studied abroad there years ago, I got called the N-word every single day when I was walking to school. And I will say it actually didn't really bother me that much because in the moment I knew that I had the privilege in the situation. I was like, at the end of this, I'm going to go back to the US, to my private university, whatever. So long as you don't physically attack me, whatever. But guess what? Somebody on our trip did get physically attacked. Despite having privilege over her attackers, she still got attacked because of their racism. Racism has multiple avenues of being harmful to people. Your unwillingness to understand this is so beyond. I don't even take this video. I don't know why it's still up. This video is causing so much damage to the Black and Palestinian solidarity we're trying to build and continue that has existed for so long, despite Black people being faced with anti-Blackness from the people that we are being allied with. I'm not sure what is wrong with some of you, genuinely.
One of the things that I pick up as a Black person is microaggressions. And I'm going to tell you what I comprehended as a Black man that watched that video. I comprehended that this was a joint juncture between a Palestinian group and a Black group that went over to Palestine, because she didn't say that the group was going over to visit Israelis. She said that they were going over to visit Palestinians. And that the Black people, when they were in the West Bank, they were experiencing these microaggressions and anti-Blackness from the Palestinians. And she didn't deny that it didn't happen. She didn't say it didn't happen. She said it was different. Anti-Blackness isn't different. It's the same in every single community. And it does not matter that there are Black Palestinians. I think you guys believe that bullshit that you tell yourself that because you have Black Palestinians, that Palestinians in no way can be anti-Black. And that is not true. There are Black Latinos, and Latinos are anti-Black. A lot of them. I'm also going to tell you what else I comprehend. I comprehended that she didn't say that these people were lying. She didn't say that the Black people that allegedly were talking about this in a private group were lying. She simply said that they needed to get over the anti-Blackness because of what's happening to her people. That because what's happening to the Palestinian people is supposed to take precedence over what their feelings are, that they should just accept the disrespect. You see, I comprehend a lot of things. Microaggressions very well. I can even see the microaggressions in this comment. Yeah.
This is why some people are so dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from...
I don't even know where to start, except for that video I found extremely offensive and anti-Black. Yeah. No matter where you're at in the world, and I'm talking to Black folks now, you have a right to call out anti-Blackness. It doesn't matter the circumstance. If somebody is being anti-Black, you have the absolute right to call it out. Do not give way on the sidewalk to it. That's the first thing. Second thing, that creator made some points that I agree with in her video. So that I'm saying it. But there were some other points where she took some latitude that isn't hers to take. So there's one part where the creator is like, oh, let me tell you about Black spaces I've been in, and those are basically not good Black people, but there are good Black people. I found that exceptionally offensive too. Because you don't speak for the Black community. No matter how often you've been there, you don't speak for us. Much like I do my best to ask, to not center. And it sounded like you were talking about a group of Black women, which I found even more infuriating. Please stop digging up Black activists to justify anti-Black behavior. Some of the commentary, like the artwork, if somebody said something offensive, I absolutely think it appropriate to call out. I would not disagree with the creator there, but I think that people have taken privilege in situations that is not theirs to take on behalf of Black people and to speak for Black people. And I find myself exceedingly so frustrated that I cannot even articulate the way I'd like because of how offensive I found that entire video. It's just offensive. Yeah.
Black people have got to stop trying to go to these anti-Black countries. It's woven into the fabric of countries across continents, embedded in culture, media, religion, and government. From Europe to Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, the world has systemically devalued, dehumanized, and discriminated against Black people. In Europe, blackface is still performed in festivals like Zwarte Piet in the Netherlands, defended as tradition. Italy has its own anti-Black legacy, much of it rooted in colonialism and internal classism. For centuries, Southern Italians were looked down upon by Northern Italians as darker, more primitive, and less European. This same internal racism was weaponized when Mussolini invaded Ethiopia in the 1930s, portraying Black Africans as subhuman. That mindset didn't die with fascism. Today, Black people, especially African migrants, in Italy face police brutality, job discrimination, and open hate speech. In India and China, dark skin is associated with poverty, ugliness, and inferiority. Skin bleaching products are billion-dollar industries. China has no history of colonial slavery, but anti-Blackness still thrives there. In Chinese TV shows, blackface is still aired on national television, used for comedy, humiliation, and mockery. Even government-backed events have included blackface performances with actors wearing exaggerated red lips and monkey-like features. On top of that, during the pandemic, we saw African migrants in cities like Guangzhou thrown out of their homes, denied service. In Arab countries, Afro-Arabs are often treated as second-class citizens, many of whom face daily racial slurs and economic exclusion. Long before the Atlantic slave trade, there was the Arab slave trade, which lasted over 1,300 years, longer than the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were kidnapped, trafficked, and enslaved across the Middle East and North Africa. Unlike in the Americas, these enslaved Africans were often castrated, erased from family lineage, and denied generational legacy. Today, anti-Blackness in Arab countries is still very real. Black Arabs in places like Mauritania, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon are often treated as second-class citizens. Racial slurs like abed, which literally means slave in Arabic, are still commonly used to refer to Black people. Afro-Arabs are regularly shut out of media, government, and economic opportunities. And if they speak up, they're often told racism doesn't exist in the Arab world. Let's be clear. This is not just cultural. It's systemic, it's historical, and it's still happening. In Latin America, Afro descendants, the ones who built those economies with their labor, are still the poorest and most overlooked communities. Brazil imported more enslaved Africans than any other country, nearly 5 million. But despite this, Black Brazilians today remain the most impoverished, undereducated, and targeted by police violence. They make up the vast majority of people in Brazil's favelas, but are rarely seen in positions of power. In Venezuela, dark-skinned Afro-Venezuelans face constant social exclusion. Pelo malo, meaning bad hair, is used to describe kinky hair and reflects how deep self-hate and anti-Black messaging run in Latin culture. Argentina went so far as to push the idea that it was a white nation. After slavery was abolished, the government actively promoted European immigration to whiten the population and erase its African heritage. This isn't just about white supremacy, it's about global anti-Blackness, rooted in colonialism, slavery, and the myth of Black inferiority that was sold to the world. Let's look at recent events that happened in Ukraine. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out in 2022, we saw viral videos of Black students being kicked off buses, called the N-word, refused entry at borders, and left to walk for miles in freezing weather, just for being black. Ukrainians fleeing war were welcomed into Europe with open arms. But black refugees, mostly students from Africa and the Caribbean, were treated like dirt, denied help, denied safety, denied humanity. Let's be real. In the middle of a war, anti-blackness still found a way to thrive. And while some of our people were organizing donations and hashtags for Ukraine, Ukraine wasn't checking for us. Their actions spoke louder than words. Too many times we fight for everybody's causes: immigrants, LGBTQ+, Palestinians, Ukrainians. Yet when we cry out about police brutality, economic exclusion, or reparations, crickets. From Arab nations to Asian powers, from Europe to South America, anti-blackness is everywhere. It's not always about the Klan or police brutality. Sometimes it's in the jokes, the silence, the policy, the exclusion, the language, and the lies told to erase our presence. This global system was built to keep black people at the bottom, no matter the country, no matter the language. And it's time we stop pretending otherwise. We show up for others, but they don't show up for us. It's time we stop pouring our energy into people who've never had our back and start investing in us. Fight for black schools, support black businesses, defend black women and men, build black wealth, protect black children, organize around black needs first. Nobody else is coming to save us. If the world wants our help, they need to respect our humanity first. Black Americans have a legacy of resistance, innovation, and strength. Let's not water that down by constantly begging to be seen. From now on, our energy and our resources must be reserved for those who return it. Because black liberation starts with black focus. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.